We make decisions every single day. We wake up in the morning. That's a decision whether we like it or not. We put on clothes in the morning. It's a decision. You might be eating something and watching this video. You chose what to eat and where to eat it. You watched this video all the way to the very end and you liked and subscribed. That was a great decision. Probably the best decision that you make. Look, I don't know about you, but I don't really feel like I'm making any of these decisions at all. They don't really feel like decisions to me. Like, I didn't choose to finish that bag of Doritos. I didn't choose to binge 4 hours of TikTok before bed, but I did. This lady here posted an article that says that humans make upwards of 35,000 decisions every single day. What I found really interesting about this article is that only 226 of the decisions that we make in each day are about food, which to me feels like the only real decision that I'm making every day. 35,000 is a huge number of anything for that day, and yet it feels like nothing. In fact, before you open this, I bet you didn't even really think about anything remotely regarding this topic. But why is that? So I'm not a doctor like Dr. Eva here is, but it turns out that we don't think about the decisions that we make because we create a system that allows us to decide things, or well, something like that. The system allows us to make decisions fast and in a way that makes sense with the way that we built the system. All of what we're talking about might sound a little obvious at this point, but even if it is, we don't really think about how many decisions that we make every single day. And what's more, I never went to a decision-making class where I learned how to make like good, quick decisions. That wasn't like the objective of the class. Nowhere was I doing that. I do remember my mom telling me that I should be like wise with my time, or maybe effective with my time, or even like a good steward, but what does that even mean? Can we actually learn how to make better decisions faster? Can we recreate the fundamental systems that allow us to make good decisions? How did we even learn how to make the system in the first place? Like, what is the driving force behind all of this? So the thing is, we probably learned how to make these decisions that we make every single day at a pretty young age. And once we make that system, we don't really question the principles that lead us to those original conclusions. We constantly are exercising this muscle, and that muscle being the system that we made, but every time we're using it, we're only exercising the system. We're not actually exercising the decisions. So if we want to get better at decision making, we need to improve the actual system. If our system that is making the decisions for us needs work, then I think that we need to work on actually sharpening that process, not just working on the ambiguous goal of making better decisions. It's not helpful. I thought about what would help me be more conscious about my decisions and what might help me improve the system that I have set up. I thought of a few things. Now, it's not perfect, but I think that if you put yourself in a situation where, one, you're repeatedly forced to make decisions that you can't take back, and then you have to work through the effects of those decisions, and then you can analyze those outcomes from those decisions, and then you have to go back and repeat the process from the moment that you made that initial decision, and then see what else could have happened. If we put ourselves in situations like this, I think we might just be given the opportunity to really evaluate the decisions that we're making, and maybe even improve the system that we're relying on. Very rarely are you actually offered a chance in real life to run a simulation with no consequences that looks something like this. Thankfully, we have not real life to help us out. I am a firm believer that video games can actually be good for you. I think that video games can teach players stuff that they're not even aware of. And sometimes it's a better tool to teach us complex things than any book or lecture might try to. The thing is, if we don't know that we're learning this stuff, we might not be able to use it in our real day-to-day lives. StarFox 64 is a fantastic way to learn how to make and test a system that allows you to make fast decisions based on the information that you're presented with. This is real life, but just in a video game. If you ended up all the way here and you're not actually familiar with StarFox 64, it's a fast-paced rail shooter where you play as a space animal pilot and you set out to save the solar system that's being destroyed by this evil floating head and hands. But we do this by flying through each level and charting a path from one end of the solar system all the way to the other. Our ship flies through each level at a constant speed, and our objective inside each level is to get to the end of each level while destroying as many enemy ships as possible and completing as many alternate or secondary objectives as possible if you want to. In each level, there are primary objectives, and then there are secondary objectives too. The primary objectives are completed usually pretty easily. All you really need to do is just fly through the level and not blow up, and you'll move on to the next level. Pretty simple in that regard. If you complete a secondary objective, you'll be given the opportunity to change the route that you're taking through the solar system. These secondary objectives are not as easy as the primary objectives to figure out. They usually take a number of playthroughs to find. These could be things like, well, get a specific score on a specific level. You need to fly through these arches after you save one of your teammates. You need to shoot all these little things, these little skylights, and not be spotted by the enemies. If we're not using a guide to tell us where each one of these little things are, we might find that this kind of repetition is exactly the kind of good, systematic decision making that will improve our skills and speed as decision makers. So, like I mentioned before, our ship flies at a constant speed. We're not given an infinite amount of time to fly around in one spot, jump on rocks and try to check where a secret might be. We need to have a plan actually going into the level and then adapt that plan once we find something that works. Additionally, only one of the levels actually tells us that we've completed the level as soon as we've completed the secondary objective. Every other level that we finish, we have to finish all the way to the end to see if we are actually going to the new place that we want to go to. And on top of that, we can only really try a level a few times before we game over and we have to start all the way over at the beginning. This really isn't that punishing, however, because each level is only about 10 to 15 minutes long, and getting from the start to the finish only takes about an hour. This gameplay loop is exactly the kind of loop that improves our ability to make decisions quick and fast. Other games, they might have some aspects of this system involved in it. Many RPG games, for example, they have alignment systems that change the game depending on if our character makes good or bad decisions. This fills the first two criteria that we were talking about earlier that might help us be better decision makers, but it doesn't really easily allow us to repeat our choices or easily analyze the results of each decision. StarFox lets you do both of these things because the gameplay loop is so tight. We remember which decisions we made and what immediate effects those decisions had. And we know that if we had made a different choice, we would have a different outcome. It's obvious. So StarFox 64 isn't only good for learning one thing though. By incorporating decisions that cannot be taken back and visually instructing us that going to one level prohibits us from going to different places, this gameplay loop can also teach us what a cost-benefit analysis is, and it implicitly teaches us that time is a zero-sum game. This is not something that can be taught at school. This is not something that will be naturally learned on the playground. This is the kind of stuff that college professors do their very best to get their students to try to understand. Our life, our time, our business are all relying on the choices that we make. Recognizing that we can only do one thing at a time, and that certain choices that we make disqualify us from others, and that these two concepts are linked together is a huge life lesson that is not easily learned anywhere but in a practical environment like StarFox 64. StarFox also has a great message. It's that we can be stronger and overcome the biggest, most evil situations that are present in our lives, even if they have taken those close to us down before. We ourselves can rise to the occasion, and with a little endurance and perseverance, we can overcome. I kind of mentioned this before, but I believe strongly that games can be more than just time sinks. They often have valuable life lessons that can teach us something important about the world or ourselves. Not every game is made equal. So I've created a system that I'm using to rate every single game that I review based on not just their enjoyability, but on the game's actual ability to teach us something about the world, ourselves, or something useful in your real life. So the things that I'm taking account into each review, 4 basic categories. It's problem solving, real life skills, empathy building, a message, and I'm tacking on enjoyability just for fun. So each of these topics will contribute to a weighted score that will make the overall score, and that overall score you can kind of use as a metric to understand maybe this game actually has something worth playing, or not. With all that said, here's a quick breakdown of StarFox 64. If you want a bigger breakdown and you're kind of interested in this thing, there's a full blog post on my Patreon. The full blog post is free, but if you're interested in supporting me there, that's a great place to do it. You can subscribe too. Okay, without further ado, here we go. So problem solving gets a 1 out of 2 for this game. So it's present, but it's not really apparent. The map, it offers a basic puzzle and it gives you all of the tools that you need in order to solve it. It's not the ultimate puzzle game, but it offers a surprisingly deep experience given that, well, it's not the gameplay hook at all. So we're moving on to real life skills. This gets a 2 out of 3. So this is niche, but really actually pretty useful skills. So this gives us a one-of-a-kind experience that teaches us the value of making a decision on time and correctly. It teaches us that time is zero-sum and must be managed wisely. Next, we got empathy building. So this is present and apparent. Characters are extremely well voiced, they're extremely well acted, and they make you feel like you are actually part of the team. Your actions in the game actually directly affect how the game plays out, and the game responds accordingly. So the message, again, it is a 2 out of 2. It is extremely uplifting. It is telling you that no matter what kind of things that are in your life or have brought your family down, like, you're going to be able to overcome it as long as you have a little bit of perseverance and you can make it through. And then finally, enjoyability. This gets absolutely a 2 out of 2. It's extremely fun. The graphics are, of course, a little dated, but it's really enjoyable. I can still play this game endlessly nearly 30 years after its release. So overall, this comes out to an 8 out of 10. This is an extremely good score for this rating. Most games have no chance to score any points on multiple different categories for this rating scale. So the fact that it got anywhere close to a 10 means that it's actually worth your time, and I think that you should check it out. StarFox 64 is fun, and it can teach you things that are really not very easy to teach. Playing it is enjoyable, immersive. Its graphics, again, have aged, but the gameplay still holds extremely strong. This is a project that I have been working on for a really long time now, and I finally feel like I'm ready to actually execute it. So I'm really glad that we could do this together, and if you have any recommendations for any games that you'd like me to rate with this kind of thing in mind, let me know in the comments, write somewhere else. I don't know, you can find my Discord. There's plenty of places to reach me. StarFox 64 can make us better decision makers, and I hope that you get the chance to play it again with all of this in mind. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.